I want to believe that nimefika dwendi. Now I know how it's going to be a tongue twister for some of us. So my dwendi starts on a very good note. Thank you so much to my panel. Of course, they decided to surprise me this morning, so I say asante sana. And I can only hope that, of course, we'll be there in one piece and everyone is going to see this beautiful year and, of course, experience the goodness that comes along with it. And in as much as you might be feeling like, of course, you're a little bit pessimistic, I mean, you need not to worry. You should still hold your hope high that things are going to change, things are going to be good. I mean, take part in that change. And of course, the panel of the day, or the panelists of the day, Cyrus Litso, political analyst, and Kidi Mwaga, who's a lawyer. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And of course, some of the young Turks that have decided that they're going to be part and parcel of change in the country in regards to, first of all, of course, addressing issues, part and parcel of the BBI volunteers, and addressing the issues, the building bridges and what we're supposed to do, and building the gap. Actually, it's actually not just building bridges, but building or bridging the gap that has been there. So this is more like it. And that is what we'll be discussing this morning. We just take a look at the events of the year, what has played throughout the year, like in regards to matters health, in regards to matters, of course, corridors of justice, in regards to the tragedies that we have witnessed as a country, the violence against, of course, spouses. So we'll be discussing this, but before we delve deep into that, we take a look at all the newspapers. So if we can be able to get a copy of what is on the newspapers, or better yet, we just cross over to it, which is what I have. And sadly enough, or good enough, politics will not fail to be part and parcel of the conversations that we have of the newspapers. Even as we head towards the end of the year, some of the things go slow, and we'd expect that maybe the newspaper would be talking about, ushering in the new year, or New Year resolutions, or the changes that we've witnessed. So before we delve into the newspaper and understand the newspaper, let's first of all take a look at what has played out in regards to the corridors of justice. If we have that story on matters justice, Madam Director, so we can be able to see that.
2019, the wheels of justice this year started grinding right here at the Supreme Court, where the David Maraga-led division closed the chapter on the 2017 election petitions. Top on the list being Embu Governors Martin Wambora and Nyambira's John Nyangaramas, whose election petitions were dismissed.
The petition of appeal dated 7 September 2018 is hereby dismissed.
The judges on January 30th ruled that Nyangarama was validly elected and that Wambora's rival, Lenny Kivuti, did not raise issues on the interpretation or application of the Constitution in his petition.
For the avoidance of doubt, the declaration of the result of the election of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission in respect of the governor for Embu County is hereby upheld.
Kabuchai MP James Mukwe also retained his seat after the Apex Court overturned nullification of his election by the Appeals Court.
Now, that was not the end of election petitions at the highest court in the land, as many more rulings were made later on in the year, which we'll be getting back to in a moment. But it was a hilly 2019 for the Milimani Law Courts right here, as these corridors of justice made decisions that got a lot of attention, both home and abroad.
The first case that put Kenya on the global map happened on May 24th, when a three-judge bench made up of Justices Chacha Mwita, Roslyn Aburili, and John Mativo unanimously upheld the ban on same-sex relations.
We find that the impugned sections are not unconstitutional. Accordingly, the consolidated petitions have no merit. We hereby decline the relief sought and dismiss the consolidated petition.
A decision that drew strong criticism from the United Nations and various rights activists.
Really ashamed to see that this is how the courts have decided. However, we still continue to believe in the rule of law, and we are going to appeal this decision.
So we try to make it clear that in interpreting the Kenyan Constitution, they should be interpreting our law based on how Kenyans intended that law to be interpreted.
Another matter that opened Kenya to the globe was the determination on June 19th, when the High Court found 3 men guilty of aiding and abetting Al-Shabaab fighters who carried out the Garissa University attack that killed 148 people, mostly students, 4 years ago.
I'm satisfied that the incident that took place at the Garissa University College on the morning of 2nd April 2015 bore all the above elements of a terrorist act.
Justice Francis Ndai said the three Kenyans, Mohammed Ali Abikar, Hassan Aden Hassan, and Rashid Charles Meresero, a Tanzanian, were members of the Al-Shabaab terrorist group whose members carried out the attack.
The first and second accused persons did so through the communications on the mobile phone, while the accused person, the fifth accused person, has been shown to have been in company of the attackers by his presence at the scene and by his conduct.
And as such, they were all slapped with life sentences.
In total, therefore, the first and second accused person will serve 41 years imprisonment each.
The decision in that case was not all gloom and doom, and inasmuch as it was filled with tension and sadness, there was this moment.
The fourth accused person, Sahal Diri, also known as Sahali Diri Hussein, was let off the hook after the prosecution failed to link him to the attack. What caught the attention of many, however, is that Sahali could be seen engaging what seemed to be long prayers, with many arguing that they could have led to his acquittal.
Now, the Anti-Corruption Division of the High Court is housed here at the Malimani Law Courts, where this 2019 was a beehive of activities as the anti-graft trio of DPP Nordin Haji, DCI boss George Kinoti and EACC chief Twalib Mbarak became the greatest nightmare to officials whose hands were caught in the cookie jar.
The first county chief to be dragged through the corridors of the David Maraga-led arm of government was Moses Kasaine Lenol Kulal, governor of Samburu County, who was charged with corruption, economic crimes, and misappropriation of about 84 million Kenya shillings. It is here that the court flexed its judicial muscle and slapped Lenol Kulal with the record 100 million shillings bail.
Accused one shall be released on a bond of Kenya shillings 150 million with one surety of similar amount or a cash bail of Kenya shillings 100 million.
It was since reduced to 10 million. This was followed by the subsequent arraignments of Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu and his Nairobi counterpart Mike Sonko, who was slapped with punitive bail terms.
After having considered all the material placed before me, I am of the considered opinion that all accused are hereby admitted to bail terms. These bail terms must be adhered to the letter. Any violation shall lead to cancellation of the bail terms.
Other senior government officials to feel the weight of the scales of justice include suspended Treasury CS Henry Rotich and his PS Kamau Thuge, who are alleged to have taken a sip from the dreaded Aror and Kimorer Dams funds.
All right, welcome back. Before we even delve deep in what has played out within the corridors of justice, we agree and we acknowledge the fact that every other issue in the country and every other issue that has been contested or maybe would want proper interpretation will always land itself in the courts. And of course, what is playing right now in regards to matters of politics and also the question of corruption towards the last bit of that piece, I think I'd love to hear what you two have to say in regards to, first of all, the question of devolution and where it places the fight against corruption, because then the biggest talk as it stands right now is one, what of course the Secretary General of Jubilee Party said that within the Jubilee Party, of course, elections, they're not going to allow leaders who've been named as corrupt leaders to proceed and, of course, vie. And that aside, also, we talk about the question of governance and, you know, whether indeed they should get immunity, as, of course, they claim or as they would ask for, and whether it should go to that point whereby there should be more interpretation of the laws. The other day, of course, there was that uphold of the ruling that, of course, they should be barred from accessing their offices. And moving forward, it seems like they're not happy about that. The DPP himself saying that, of course, all governors are on the radar and they should stay woke because then the wheels of justice will come rolling down on them. So when we look at what has played out at the level of the corridors of justice in addressing the issues of corruption, do you suppose then that we have done right? Or is it true that, of course, the claims that have been leveled against them, that they have been the missing link on the fight against corruption, are equally true?
I'll go in first. I will first say that I'm most grateful for being hosted here once again.
Always a pleasure.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I know, we are crossing by faith. There's no question about that. Yes.
Well, I would say that the judiciary has done tremendously well under extremely difficult circumstances, because you realize that while the judiciary has attempted to expand, to open up new stations, to enhance access to justice, as envisaged in Article 159, you realize that the executive has wanted to play favorites, and it has attempted, both by design and by default, to frustrate, to slam brakes on the works of the judiciary.
Right.
For instance, in the last financial year, we are all aware that the executive, or there was budget cuts that faced the executive, the judiciary.
The judiciary, yes.
And of course, that slowed down the work of the judiciary tremendously. For instance, a number of tribunals were therefore unable to sit and dispense justice. In spite of all this, you realize that the judiciary has pronounced itself beautifully on a number of matters touching on corruption. For instance, when Governor Lenol Kulal was taken to court, Honorable Murigi was the first person to ask him not to go back to the offices of the county government of Samburu.
Right. Because
she described the county government offices as a crime scene. And then the good governor moved to the High Court before Justice Honorable Mumbi Ngugi, and Honorable Mumbi Ngugi upheld the orders of Honorable Murigi.
Yeah.
And then they went to the Court of Appeal. And the court was consistent. And a lot of people are frustrated with the judiciary because they expect the judiciary to turn into a lynching mob where there is instant justice. Right. But you see, we are in a common law jurisdiction where parties come to court and then they argue their matters before the judge, before the magistrate, so that the judge then pronounces himself or herself based on the facts presented and the law. So in my estimation, the judiciary has done extremely well under very difficult circumstances.
All right, let's play the comparison game, Cyrus, and let's not look at this time. Okay, well, forget about that time when, of course, the budgets were cut and all that. Prior to the cutting of the budget, one would ask, were they still doing what was expected of them? Let's go a little bit further and say, you know, in comparison to the way we've dealt with issues to do with justice prior, of course, to this Jubilee government, or even during the first phase of the Jubilee government, or the first, term of the Jubilee government, do you suppose then that justice was dispensed as expected in regards to addressing issues? Remembering the NYS saga, corruption saga back then, even before there was that frustration that, of course, the judiciary purports to have received from the executive.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have a little cold, but I manage. Looking at the judiciary itself, let us now first look at before the budget cuts. I can say it didn't perform well per se with the expectations of Kenyans. Because before it cried of these budget cuts, which only came, I think, the frustration started after the 2017 elections. I think where the term of we shall revisit
came on board.
The judiciary itself has not dispensed its work in the best way possible, based on the Kenyans' desires and demands. When we touch on economic crimes, and I raised this concern last week, we need to expedite matters on economic crimes, like the way we expedite matters on presidential petition. Matters of economic crimes should be of serious concern because they affect the economy of the country. They affect the growth of a nation. And when we take long on matters based on economic crimes, like corruptions from the counties, we are doing injustice to the persons.
Right.
Look at now, the 3 governors have been asked not to go
Access their office,
to access
yeah?
their offices. In brackets or in quotes, it's a crime scene. Fine. For how long are these people going to sit outside their offices? Then who will be executing their roles? Okay? Because the deputy governors cannot also, to some extent, execute some roles that the governors do.
But look at it, Cyrus. At some point in time, Sonko himself has operated, even before being a hero compelled to do that, has operated away from City Hall. And he had decided that he's going to, was it Moore Hills?
Yes,
Moore Hills
it was
I mean, he was still dispensing justice. And as, of course, the ruling would say, it is not, it's just about the access of the office. But everything else, they are allowed to proceed and dispense, or they're allowed to proceed and, you know, just conduct as expected of them by the Constitution.
Nothing of that. Before then, Sonko had not been taken to court.
Yes.
He had just, he had some fears working from the office. He was saying that there's somebody who is after his life.
Yeah.
So he said he cannot work from Nairobi County office. They used to say that he's operating from Lilian Towers. They used to say, and then he confirmed that he's operating from his home in Machakos.
Right.
But now coming to this ruling of, starting with the governor of Samburu, we expect to see that, and I remember even when the governor of Samburu did a reshuffle of his office, of his cabinet,
Right.
The DPP was on alert, and he came and issued a press conference stating that he will liaise with the courts so that the bail given to the governor can be written off, so that this person goes back to jail, that he does not serve the people. Because whatever he was doing is contrary to the ruling of the courts. And by disobeying the court orders, first thing, that's against the law.
Right.
And my good friend can clarify that. Anyone who disobeys court orders should go behind bars.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a ticket to take you to prison. And when people say, we expect to see justice delivered immediately, yes, to me I say, on economic crimes, yes. Because these are matters that are touching our economy. The governors are not only 3 governors, all the governors have misappropriated the funds that the treasury has disbursed to them.
Right.
What have they done? When we sit down and do the analysis and economic evaluation, have we achieved whatever we desire to achieve? When we sit down and look at their manifestos that they gave us when they were campaigning, have they achieved even 1% of the manifesto? No. So these are some of the things and some of the queries that make Kenyans cry in a big loud. They say we've not been given justice the way we demand or the way we require.
Right.
So the way they expedite the presidential petition, and I repeat, it should also come that there is a timeline on economic matters, especially anything that touches the ministry.
Yes.
You see, like the Ministry of Treasury right now,
yeah.
we have an acting minister in it. The counties also. We have some also other parastatals that have misappropriation of funds, and they are acting people in it. And there's another problem that we have right now is when the president, when he says that he's also fighting corruption, and I take it as a PR as usual, looking at Office of the Auditor General right now, up to now, we don't have the Auditor General after the exit of Ouko. Yes.
This a substantial, well, of course, for that matter, yes, we
So,
still are struggling
and you
with
see,
that.
there's no audit
Control of
reports.
budget, at least we got,
There is
yes.
no audit reports that are coming out. Okay? And these audit reports helps us understand where we are going wrong and where we need to go right. Okay?
Well, not forgetting the shots.
These things are really affecting us. So the Treasury himself, CS Rotich, right now is in court. A lot of things have happened in the country under his watch. We don't expect him just to be walking around, okay? And he has, everybody knows what has happened to the economy based on his leadership. There's a time, and my friend here will advise on it, we look at the evidence, okay? Let the evidence expel the justice.
Exactly. So how then does that become the shortfall of the courts, especially when we talk about looking at the evidence? And I think that's when he comes in. And also just taking a look at this scenario where, of course, now the Jubilee Party declares that that is by the Secretary General, that was on Sunday, said that the party will not allow leaders accused of corruption to vie for any leadership positions in the election schedule. You know, how then does that come in to address the question of corruption, as they would rightfully put it? Because then we look at the factor that equally these people are protected by the Constitution, are protected by law, that, you know, you cannot incriminate someone based on the fact they've just been mentioned or they have, you know, allegations mated upon them in regards to matters corruption until they are proven guilty. There is no way you can bar them from, you know, accessing some of the rights, of course, whether within the party or whether as a citizen as it stands. So before, of course,
before he picks in,
okay, well,
let me add.
I think I should weigh in first.
No, I just want to give you get the 2 points
briefly,
there.
yeah? Briefly, so that at least
now,
we can have him
on the
in.
political party
Yes.
things, I've always said here, the Political Parties Act should play its role. Okay?
Okay.
And leaders come from the political parties. Look at the leaders we have right now. We have Jubilee, we have ODM, we have Ford Kenya, we have all those other parties. Okay?
Yeah.
Leaders come from these parties.
So they should be straightened at the level of the party?
And if you go to each and every party, it has a constitution.
Right.
If you go to each and every party, it has structures in place. If you go to each and every party, they have ways to dispense justice. Okay?
Is this not a structure that they're just borrowing or they're just bringing on board, a foreign structure?
There are structures in place. There are structures in place in the paper.
Don't you think that every other person within the Jubilee Party then would be stopped to be part and parcel of this?
You see, what we need, we need to have good leaders. And good leaders should come from the parties.
Okay.
Because very few leaders are elected on a private, on an independent whatever ticket. Okay. So we need to dispense justice from the party.
So yes or no, Jubilee is right to do this?
It is very right.
All right,
and I support it.
Let's come to you.
If it will only work, I support it.
Before we even address the independence of the judiciary and or maybe the independence of the courts and whether there was a constitutional coup, as of course was you know, named at that particular time or was alleged at that particular time. What do you make of such a move, you know, within a certain party that is also focused on addressing the question of corruption? A great move?
It is. But then you realize that one, this is reactionary.
Yeah.
Reactionary because Jubilee Party is saying this after the governor of Nairobi was arraigned in court. And we all agree that the people of Nairobi, in their infinite wisdom or lack of it, elected a charlatan into office.
Okay.
And if the party was being proactive, if the party was being fidel
they would have
to the spirit of the law,
right.
Forget about the letter, to the spirit of the law. If you are a country that places premiums on constitutionalism, then folks like the governor of Nairobi would not have ended up being the governor, even a senator. But then one of the products of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was the Judges and Magistrates Vetting Board. Under the 6th schedule of the Constitution of Kenya, 2010. And what Judges and Magistrates Vetting Board was doing was to verify the suitability of judicial officers. The board, in one of its recommendations, say that since independence, Kenya has not lacked technical judicial competence. But then what it has had is that people with this flowery judicial competence have used their competence not to protect the poor, not to uphold the law, but they've engaged in what was then called legal ingenuity, so that they circumvent the law in a way that is still lawful, but then it perpetuates an illegality. The Jubilee Party, for instance, away from the Jubilee Party, the DCI gave the governor a clean bill of health. If the DCI was doing its job, and in light of issues that are coming out, the governor would not have been cleared. But then, I mean, going forward into the new decade, one of those things we need to look as a people is fidelity to the law, and not fidelity to the letter. It is fidelity to the spirit of the law, because we can have tomes and tomes and tomes of law and law books. But then if we do not have the courage to
implement them, yeah.
then, I mean, it would be an exercise in futility.
Speaking of course, the law now brings in the question of the BBI, brings in the question of the Punguza Mizigo, brings in the talk of a referendum, which is technically what we've been talking about. Of course, before we will discuss also what has played out at the level of the judiciary. I mean, the BBI now coming on board, and of course, sort of looks like a sum up of matters politics in the country. You know, whatever it is that has played out in line with politics, the shenanigans within, eventually they all boil down to this level of the handshake and then eventually to the BBI talk as it stands today. The biggest story on the front page of the Daily Nation, or the biggest story of the Daily Nation today, says, of course, Murathe is out here saying that Uhuru will go for PM, so he's not exiting the stage anytime soon. And in what seems strange, Ruto allies now change the tact on how they respond to the question of the BBI, and this time around they seem as though they have dropped their hardline stance on the BBI report, and of course the ODM's push for the creation of a powerful prime minister's post. And it seems like they are willing to nod their head into the implementation of the BBI. One, would we say that this is going to be, of course, pushed down the throat of most of the Kenyans, and in the event that, of course, it goes through or it sails through, because as it stands, it looks like Hata Punguza Mizigo is not a discussion that we are having anymore. That one was quashed long time ago. Is it going to offer a solution to the issues that Kenyans are facing today? Is it coming in handy to address issues or to bridge the gap?
In responding to your question, let me draw parallels between two statesmen that I admire so much. One of them is Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States of America. And then the other one is FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president who lifted a country out of depression. I am excited about Lincoln because in a difficult time in the United States of America, when the North and the South, the Confederacy and the Union were fighting, he had the choice of going for what was convenient and expedient. But then Abraham chose what was right. And in so doing, he preserved the soul of the nation. And that is why subsequently, when American presidents go to the halls of Congress to address the Congress, they say that in perfecting our union, Kenya is a young democracy, 50, 60 years. And there are issues we are still grappling with to get right. At independence, we talked of fighting three common enemies: poverty, ignorance, and disease. When poverty, ignorance, and disease are fought and eliminated, it brings up the quality of life. But then, if we are unable to fight these things, then usually there is a problem somewhere that then undermines the quality of life of our people. The BBI, as an offshoot of handshake, is one of the best things to happen to us in modern history in this nation. But most people, because of political expediency, will not tell you that, because they will want to say that we should have, that Raila Odinga should have pushed Jubilee government to its knees, and people are saying that the president should not have reached out to the prime minister, and okay, those two options would have had disastrous consequences. A lot of people have been talking about a revolution. The question is, are they themselves ready for a revolution?
Yes.
Have they participated in anything that would demonstrate that they are willing to go a revolution way?
Speaking of the cartoon edition that we've seen today.
Yes. Kenya has been the leader in the region, economically, militarily, and of course, socially. We are the country that invented mobile money in this region and in the world. BBI. Is BBI the best thing? And I will tell you yes. The president and the prime minister said that they are coming together to build bridges to a new Kenyan nation. In one of the 9-point agendas, they've talked about national ethos. The problem of corruption emanates not from laws, but from national ethos. Are you as a person decent enough to say that, considering that my name has been adversely mentioned, considering that people no longer have faith in me, considering that aspersions have been cast on my character, on my conduct, that I should step aside until I am cleared. People have always embraced the culture of, I'd rather die. Those are things that we can then rectify through the BBI. Yes. And
All
BBI
right.
for me is the best thing to happen to this country. And I'll demonstrate why as we go forward.
As we proceed. Okay, whether BBI is the best thing or not, of
Yes.
course, Lito also has his chance to say whether indeed he thinks is the right move. Bringing or giving birth to, of course, different powerful leaders for that matter, and, you know, different likelihoods of us experiencing different factions and or maybe having coalitions cropping up after this. I mean, what do you make of this move of the BBI and moving forward? Do you suppose then that this is what is going to decide and determine the fate of any other leader come 2022? Of course, people have told Deputy President William Ruto to stay woke because the plans that are on ground are actually clearly plans to abe him out or to wash him out or maybe to, of course, alter his, you know, desire or his move towards ensuring that he takes the power in 2022. So what do you make of this when you look at the kinds of, you know, leaders that are cropping up and what is left of the Mount Kenya region, which also is key in regards to what direction the politics of the country will take?
Thank you. BBI, I said it, it's not a bad thing per se. It's a good thing. If it will address, or if it will go down to address the issues that we face.
Right.
The issues of TJC they are touched on in BBI. The issues of land are partially touched, not deeply.
But remember, they
partially
equally
touched.
touch on some of the figures within the
Yes,
task force.
yes, they are touched on the BBI thing. And Kligra report also it's touched on it.
Right.
The IBC matters is touched on it. And if all these things are well implemented to the latter, and not the report shelved, the way the other reports have always been shelved, then this country will be safe.
The current constitution does not, in a way, address, or, I mean, is there a way that we can, of course, equally implement the current constitution and successfully address some of these issues?
Nicely. The current constitution has not been fully implemented. Remember, we had the CIC, the Constitution Implementation Committee, led by Nyachai. When it exited the office, it left the job halfway, not fully done. Okay? Now, the work has been taken back to the parliamentary committee, which is, I think, the Ndaragwa MP is a member to it. But you see, the parliamentarians themselves are not ready to implement the full constitution. Why? It will eat them at the end of the day. The BBI came out good, in a very good way, because it was left to the very non-political people. It only had Senator Wako and Haji. But these other people were not that politicians, okay?
Right.
Which was a good and a brilliant idea, because you cannot leave everything to politicians. You are messing it up. Why has the DP taken an about turn and his team?
Yeah.
He knows and he has seen
You
the
can't
goodness.
build them, you join them. Oh, the goodness. Okay.
in the BBI itself.
Right.
He has seen it because when it came out to be like it is a Uhuru Raila affair, now these people sat down and said, now we need to look into this thing.
Right.
When it has not been mentioned once or twice, many times, and Atwoli is the one who started it by saying Uhuru is still young.
He's still young. He's not
going
going
nowhere.
anywhere. Yeah.
Okay? Something that I dispute. Obama is younger than even Uhuru. Okay? The PM for Canada is even younger than Uhuru.
And
Because
he's
right now he's going to 40.
Yeah.
Okay? And when his term will end, he will exit the office democratically. So you don't need to come and create positions for you to come back. What are you
So
coming
ours
to
is
do?
old school politics,
Okay?
African politics?
Now, Ruto and his team have sat down and read and looked at what they talk of the PM. And you see the fronters of the BBI themselves. The other time we heard about saying that the PM position, they'll earn the same as the MP. Okay?
Yeah.
Which has also brought a controversy and a very huge debate on it that needs to be looked into.
Right.
Now, Ruto and the MPs have seen, like, if we have this large number of MPs from our area,
Right.
then our person can even miss the presidency and become the PM.
PM.
We don't lose anything.
Okay.
Okay? Because one, ODM is not in Central region. ODM is in Nyanza and Western regions and part of Coast regions. Okay, and there's no way you can tell me somebody will have to go on an ODM ticket in Central region. So where will this majority come to the Central guys so that they can get the cling to the Prime Minister position?
Right.
No. Okay. When you look at those equations and do the analyzation, it tells you it's a zero thing. Now, because it comes out clearly that the president will, or the MPs will appoint the PM from the majority of MPs a person has.
Okay.
Okay? And you see Ruto,
yeah, you can come in. No problem.
Ruto and their team will plan themselves. Look at the Rift Valley block. And some people from Northeastern, look at the Kinadwale, the way they are protecting
the
BBI
and some bit of people
look
from
at
Mount
also
Kenya.
From also Mount Kenya. Yes. Look at also the people from Western. There are also people who are
Though they say
supporting
in Mount Kenya they will change tone at the last minute, though we don't know.
So it is a tricky thing, and when you see DP taking a slow stance on it, and remember when he was doing the cuckoo whatever in Eldoret, he said, it's not if Kenyans are going to lose life because I need the presidency, then let it be.
Yeah,
it's not a matter that I be a president.
All right,
read into those statements and understand. So do an analysis.
Yes.
Do let us bring what we call BODMAS, brackets of division multiplication, and let us try to look into it. If now they say who wants to be the PM, where will he get the MPs?
Okay.
Okay. If they say that any other person wants to have the PM position, let us look at those equations.
Okay.
And now this answers the question why the DP
has
and the team
tune.
has changed the tune.
So this one will shape 2020 politics.
Remember, I raised the concern here and said, when we spearheaded for the new constitution, okay, we believed, and for us who spearheaded the new constitution, we believed Raila will be the president. Yeah. But what came after? He has not become the president the way we believed he will. Okay? Now we are spearheading another change of the BBI. Are we sure he will even get that PM position?
Certainly not.
The question that we are raising.
When addressing ourselves to constitutional matters in this country, we must stop having personalities in mind.
Okay.
And if anything, when addressing ourselves to matters constitution, we must have our worst enemies in mind occupying those positions.
Right.
And I'm a little frustrated and disappointed, of course, that a young person having an opportunity to appear on a television of national, audience, has DP Ruto in mind, has PM in mind, has Uhuru in mind. Let's move away from that. These are mortals. Jacomi is in his 70s.
Right. He'll exit the stage soon.
I mean, even if Jacomi were to live for 100 years, of course, they are being mortal men and women, there are things we may not be able to discharge in the next 20 years. And of course, Ruto will get there at some point, and President Uhuru will get there at some point.
But looking at the role they play.
Just hold the thought. Right now, we must also appreciate that these are politicians. Ruto is a politician, Raila is a politician, Uhuru is a politician, and of course, there are people who survive or live in this town by purporting to be there, watu wa mkono, who then purport to speak for them. One thing that young people must get right today, and especially in the BBI debate, is that they must take charge of the BBI debate. They must say what is it they want themselves. A lot of young people are fixated with the structure of the executive. Have they taken time to give their views on what they think the economic model should be? What should be our economic structure that then should ensure that there is prosperity for all? The BBI report, for instance, is suggesting a tax break for SMEs.
For SMEs, yeah.
Those are things that young people should be talking about. And they think that that is sufficient, what is in the BBI report. Because the president, in his wisdom, or lack of it, has extended the time for task force. So that for the next 1 year, we are going to have a national conversation on the BBI report occasion in a national dialogue. What is in it for the young people? Because every person is self-interested. But the young people have swallowed the lie by the politicians, hook, line, and sinker on, the fixation with the structure of the executive.
Right.
Well, they say, Kwame Nkrumah said that, seek ye first the political kingdom, and all else shall be added unto you. as we have figured with the executive structure because it is going to fix our politics. What is it that young people want? Is it that they want a pure parliamentary system, so that we have a president who is in charge of the military, who is a ceremonial president, and then we have a prime minister who comes to parliament and runs government from parliament.
So is that to say then squarely what, of course, the details that are within the Jubilee, within the BBI report should not squarely be, of course, what will be the ultimate document. So whatever it is that, you know, the likes of Atwoli was saying that, you know, we're going to get to that point whereby as a people will have conversed or we'll have had that conversation to a point whereby changes, if necessary or if need be, will be made.
Yes.
All right.
If you permit me to quote from Obama, that in a constitutional democracy, we should be able to say what we think, write what we think, without hearing a sudden knock on the door.
Okay.
In this BBI debate, we should be able to say what we think, without being vilified or that's being viewed as the final, the final solution or the final recommendation.
Okay.
If anything, young people must now come in and start talking on BBI report.
Okay, all right, as we wind up on this one, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm not a person who lacks hope. I look at the BBI report, and you see, I've addressed the issue based on the question the way it has come. Why is it that the DP Ruto camp has taken an about turn? Remember, I've always said, when we have ministers from the parliament, these people will become more accountable than the ministers we have right now. Okay? Which is evident. And I've raised not once or twice, several occasions, the case of the